The market's been moving crazy lately, and JASMY's kind of been doing the exact opposite. It hasn't really been moving too much. It's actually been seemingly finding a decent bit of support after we kind of broke down below that 1.5 cent range. And so I wanted to kind of talk about JASMY because, of course, we haven't really talked about it much recently. We do actually have some things to talk about today. Obviously, I try really hard not to just talk about things to talk about things. And so now that we have actually started to see some news, I want to make another JASMY video. Get you guys updated with what we got going on kind of over in the JASMY space. So really important announcement coming out from Hara, the JASMY CFO. And then we also are seeing some pretty interesting price action happening for JASMY as well. So we'll be taking a look at both of those. So moving on, we'll take a look at the crypto bubbles to start. We can see obviously just kind of like a mildly green day. We can see JASMY down here at 1.4%. Move kind of taking the cake here at 29.5%. Pi taking the cake to the downside here, just under 10%. We can see others doing fairly well as well. As we can see, JASMY not really moving too much in one direction or the other, which is not a good thing, but it's also not a bad thing either. So, kind of nice from that perspective. Now, if we do go look at the JASMY chart, we can see a couple of different things here. So we'll actually pull this up into full screen. We can see, obviously, since we saw that peak back in December, it's basically been down only. We have started to potentially maybe see a bottom here. If this is the low, this is kind of the first higher low that we will have seen in a very long time. Again, it could continue to sell off. We do not actually know. We can see RSI is still quite weak on the chart. So, obviously JASMY not doing particularly well at this point in time, but we can see, it's obviously fairly clear to see that we are seeing kind of a level of support being established. If I had to guess, probably kind of like around maybe this line. Obviously we do have a couple of wicks below it. We're seeing kind of a lot of price action down in this range. Now, more importantly than that, we also can see that the Bollinger Bands are starting to squeeze a little bit. Now, again, I say this all the time, but every time we see Bollinger Bands start to squeeze a bit, we do usually see a level of volatility. The last time that we saw the Bollinger Bands kind of pinch a little bit, we did actually see a break to the downside. And so, this is a strategy that I've been considering trying out for the past several weeks, maybe even months at this point. But when we start to see the Bollinger Bands pinch like this, I am half considering taking an incredibly high leverage, both short and long, expecting, of course, to get liquidated on one, but then the other one, since it's such high leverage, is going to make so much money that it offsets the loss from the other. Now, again, obviously you need to make your own investment decisions and all that type of stuff. I'm not even sure if that's something that I want to try quite yet. But what we can see kind of over history is when we do start to see kind of pinches in the Bollinger Bands, we do see increased periods of volatility. And so, it does give us at least some level of historical precedent to go off of. Not actually really seeing too many pinches in the JASMY chart on the daily, though, which is it's kind of interesting. We need to go kind of a ways back to see any. We can see here, obviously, a little bit of a pinch showing volatility there. I guess we saw a little bit of a pinch coming in, but even this is not anything I would consider like that. We did start to see a minor one here, and again, we saw how that went. And then, kind of another one right here. We did actually see kind of the initial breakdown off of this, and then we kind of started the second run up. So there is the possibility, depending on how this ends up working out, we could see some major volatility. Now, again, given the kind of fact that we're at such a low point on the JASMY chart, I would be hopeful that we could see this potential move to the upside, especially given that we're starting to see sentiment change a little bit. But again, we just never know. And so this is something where, you can't ever count on anything happening, particularly in crypto. So you always need to kind of keep your eyes open and keep an open mind to some potential alternatives and counterpoints, all that type of stuff. But as we can see on the JASMY chart, I do think that this is starting to look a little bit better. Over the past several months, this chart has looked incredibly weak. If we look at the RSI, it's basically been trending down all the while. We're finally starting to kind of level out a little bit, which is good. However, prices continue to go down as we continue to kind of level out on RSI. So, we're going to have to just kind of monitor this and track this. Like I said, it seems that we may have potentially found a bottom here, but you just never know. I do think putting volume in at this level does establish it as stronger and stronger support over time. So, we'll kind of have to see how that happens. But also, I would imagine it doesn't look like we actually have the volume on here. Let me see if I can pull the volume real quick. because we haven't, I would imagine we're not really seeing as much volume, and we can kind of see exactly that. The volume definitely kind of dropping over time. We're kind of hitting this kind of consistent minimum level of, what is this, about 30 to 40 billion. I'm assuming this is 30 to 40 billion JASMY, not 30 to 40 billion dollars, just because JASMY is still a very, very small project. But we can see that, it has kind of trended down over time. And again, obviously as the volume level stays consistent, but price goes down, the dollar, like US dollar denominated volume, is actually decreasing as well. So just something to keep in mind there. But overall, I think what we're seeing out of the JASMY chart is it looks like we may have potentially found a bottom. Again, we do not know for sure, but it looks like it could be a possibility. And so that's kind of what I'm keeping an eye out for. If we continue to put a little bit more volume in at this level and we continue to see the Bollinger Band squeeze, I might start taking some leverage plays on JASMY just to kind of see, if things start to look a little bit more look a little bit more positive and optimistic for JASMY. If you are interested in trading, I do have the links to BTCC, WEEX, and Phemex in the description below. BTCC has that 10% deposit bonus. WEEX has 20 to 30,000 in deposit bonuses as well. And then also Phemex is doing $4,800 in deposit bonuses, but they also have super cool trading bots. And they've recently introduced pilot contracts, which is really, really interesting if you're into kind of some of the more very micro cap meme coins, trading on DEXs, things like that, because you actually can trade DEX coins that aren't actually listed on centralized exchanges using leverage, which I do think is really cool. Obviously, you should be very, very, very advanced if you're doing something like this. Micro cap coins are already volatile enough as it is. And so if you're going to be using something like that, you really need to know what you're doing, because your odds of getting liquidated are incredibly high. So just keep that in mind. Only experts or very, very advanced traders should be using that if that is something that you're interested in. Now, next up, I wanted to get into X and show you guys a post that we actually saw coming out just a couple of hours ago from Hara. We can see that Janction is pleased to announce the launch of Janction GPU Pool, a distributed GPU cloud. Now, this is very standard. What comes next, I think, is actually the very important part of this message. And so we can see here, GPU cloud in Japan is very expensive, more than 3 times higher than global. That is why we are not making progress in manufacturing and lagging behind the competition in AI. I call this situation Sakura Premium and hope to appropriate the GPU market, which is somehow expensive. I will aim for the lowest price in Japan and promote the price competitiveness that we can offer through distributed environments. So of course, I think this, kind of mostly goes without saying here, but this is a very, very good kind of post to see from the JASMY team. I actually had no idea that GPU was so expensive in Japan. Now, this does kind of call into question, if it is so expensive, how is Janction going to remain competitive in kind of like a global market? Now, it may actually, be competitive in Japan, and that would be great. Obviously, Japan is a very, very strong economy, but I do wonder how this kind of scales into a more international type of situation if they can find that initial adoption. So that's something that I am kind of keeping an eye on there. I do wonder kind of how this is going to scale over time, as we are seeing that, apparently GPU in Japan is very expensive. So this is something that we will have to kind of keep an eye on. But overall, I do think that this is obviously a problem that JASMY and Janction are in fact trying to solve. And so, while this may not be a $1 trillion idea, at least in the near future, this could, if found, kind of a reasonable product market fit within the Japanese market, this could be something that would be very, very valuable for the Japanese market, the Japanese people, and then also just kind of international competitiveness within, kind of the GPU AI space, all that type of stuff within Japan. So a very, very interesting kind of announcement coming here from Hara. We'll have to see, kind of how it goes. Obviously, JASMY has been kind of their typical not very communicative, not doing a whole lot of kind of updates. They just kind of been sitting back and doing what they're doing. Again, I would imagine that they're working hard at all the things that they're doing. You can see that they are shipping things. They just announced the launch of the Janction GPU pool. So, of course, that is very good to see. They are working on things. They are kind of making it happen. And then, honestly, as we kind of continue to go into the age of AI, I think JASMY's kind of general and central type of concept of the personal data locker becomes more and more relevant kind of as we get into there. So I do think that like Jasmy could be a little bit of a sleeper and a bit of a dark horse if we go into some level of alt season, or things kind of we get back into more of a risk on environment. Again, of course, everything is dictated by the kind of macroeconomic situation, so we just have to wait and see of how that kind of shakes out and how that looks. But right now, maybe starting to see some signs of life from Jasmy, which would be very, very encouraging to see. Of course, I do own Jasmy, full disclosure, but I'm a very it's a very small position of mine, and I think it's accurately sized. I think it could do very, very well in terms of growth. But I do think that there are a lot of risk factors and a lot of various ways that Jasmy could actually end up struggling a little bit. So just something to think about. Again, alarm bells not necessarily going off quite yet for me. Just trying to kind of stay ahead of all of the things that are going on within the space, with how Jasmy's keeping up with it, all of that type of stuff. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, a like and a subscribe really, really does help. Also, if you are interested in joining my private community, I do have that link in the description below. It's a place where you can kind of talk and interact with me a little bit more kind of personally, ask questions if you have them. Of course, I do always love to answer those questions. It can give you kind of a chance for a little bit more one-on-one interaction if you are interested. Again, not too much, not anything too crazy. It's just a couple of bucks just to make sure that we're keeping the scammers and the fishers and all that type of stuff out. If you are interested, again, no pressure, just join in the link in the description below. And then also, if you have any comments, questions, anything like that, I'd love all the interaction on these videos. So if you have anything, I do read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything you want me to see, that would also be a great way to do it. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.